You can't beat a good metaphor, can you? I'd like to introduce you to a book that I've wanted to write for several years and finally published in 2022. It's this book, Taming the Risk Hurricane, Preparing for Major Business Disruption. Hurricanes always grab the news because they're the most powerful storm known to man and can cause huge damage. And in other parts of the world, they're called typhoons or cyclones. I wrote some of this book on the beautiful Caribbean island of Antigua just after Hurricane Dorian had passed through, one of the most powerful Category 5 Atlantic hurricanes. And as I speak to you now, we're clearing up after Hurricane Beryl, which has passed through the Caribbean and just hit Mexico. And so hurricanes are really powerful and attention-grabbing, and we've learned a lot about how to predict them, how to prepare for them, how to clean up afterwards. And it seemed to me that in 2021, 2022, as the world was just recovering from the COVID pandemic and the supply chain disruption, the financial markets in turmoil, the energy crisis, all sorts of different things that were coming that were creating crises in the business environment. And corporate crisis and major business disruption were everywhere. And so what I thought we might do is to take the hurricane as an extended metaphor to learn things about how we might deal with business disruption. And so I defined the concept of a risk hurricane, which I define as circumstances of extreme risk exposure, which in business can lead to significant disruption. And each of the chapters in this book starts with something which we know about an actual natural hurricane, and then applies that, makes a parallel, uses that to generate insights in how we can deal with corporate crisis. And so we've got things like defining the preconditions for a hurricane, the low pressure and the circulating vortex of air. These have parallels in the corporate environment. What are the preconditions that could lead to corporate crisis? Not all hurricanes are the same strength. We have that Saffir-Simpson scale of categories 1 to 5. How do we scale the potential size of a risk hurricane of corporate crisis or business disruption? What scales can we use to decide how big a hurricane might be? How can we prepare for a hurricane? How do we pre-position our assets? What do we need to do in advance? What do we need to be prepared to do afterwards? What can we do to make ourselves most ready for a hurricane if it should come our way, or for a business disruption or corporate crisis? How about prediction? We're familiar with the cone of uncertainty. The weather forecasters will tell us the potential path of a hurricane and how bad it might be, where it might go, and what it might do to us. And we could do the same using risk analysis to predict the path of a corporate crisis, where it might strike the business, what effect it might have on our stakeholders, and how big and bad it might be. And finally, we can talk about post-event responses. How do we actually clear up afterwards and learn the lessons and make ourselves more resilient should the next hurricane come our way or the next corporate crisis? Professor Tim Palmer, who's the Royal Society Research Professor in Climate Science at the University of Oxford, was also involved in the European Hurricane Centre. He calls this a remarkable book which compares together extreme weather and business risks, and recommends that people should read this for both purposes. You might learn a few things about natural hurricanes. What I really want you to do is learn how to prepare your business to deal with corporate crisis. So I recommend this little book, Taming the Risk Hurricane, Preparing for Major Business Disruption, published by Berwick Kohler in 2022. Thank you.